Right now, the ASEAN countries are not really globally considered to very influential, and we believe that part of it is because of the ASEAN Way, right? Because they're actually not very active in political and economic issues. So that is why we strongly believe that we actually they actually should abandon these ways. So I'll explain in three contentions. Our first contention is stability and security. Right now, in a lot of these countries, they have a lot of problems, like politically. So actually, we believe that when you have like intervention, you actually can, because this is like an ally, right? You can actually work together to solve a lot of political issues, and they have more power to negotiate, right? Because there are more countries. So like for example, in like the West Philippine Sea, they have disputes with China, right? And China is a really big country, so a lot of these countries cannot really negotiate with China very well when they are alone, right? So that is why they should have like intervention from this organization, because when they have when they have all of these countries negotiating together, big countries like China are likely going to want to give them better deals or want to negotiate them with them more, right? So we believe that this also means efficiency, right? Because they can act sooner as the crisis happens, instead of being non-interference. When they're non-interference, they have a lot of considerations, right? Is this interfering? Then we'll not do anything. Like things like that. So actually, this means that they'll delay any action that can solve a lot of crises from when they are small, right? So the crises will only become bigger and bigger while these countries don't have like enough power to completely stabilize their political or economic disputes in a very short time effectively. So that's why we actually believe that when they work together to solve these problems, when they intervene, they have better they can have better deals with like other countries, negotiate more, and they can also solve like regional economic and political issues like faster, right? Because you have to consider all of those things, no? My second point is global influence, right? So we believe that actually right now this ASEAN association is really viewed as very passive, because they're not really doing many things that affect other countries outside, or that affect a lot of really interfere with any of like the political issues or economic issues they're experiencing. So actually, we believe that on a global scale, they're not really influential, right? So if they want to become more globally influential, they should become more active. They should actively participate together to fight combat issues like climate change. And they should actively try to negotiate with other organizations or other countries. Actually, we believe that this means that like when they have these allies who that can like help them settle disputes, that can help them negotiate with other countries over time, after they negotiate for some time, like they can have more global organizations sort of see them as more influential, so they're likely to give them like better economic deals, or other countries will also consider them more when making global decisions. So that's why we actually believe that they can actually have more global influence, meaning they have better deals in the long term, or have more economic or political influence in the whole area in the long term. So actually that is why because in the status quo they're passive, they're not getting any like of their voices completely heard. But if they actually do a lot of things, if they actually like seem very active, like other organizations or other countries may view them as more important, right? And our third point is actually they'll be aligned more closely. So we believe that they can actually have a lot of projects together, like as I've mentioned, climate change projects. So, for example, countries like Indonesia, like Myanmar, they're not really having a lot of climate policies, right? Their climate is not very good. But places like Thailand, like Singapore, they care more about the climate right now, and they have more capacity to like make like their climate cleaner and things like that. But since climate is like something that is global and we should do a lot of things globally in order to change a lot of these problems, we believe that actually if they work together, if they share these resources and they align a certain goal together, that all of these countries would try to do their best to, for example, combat climate change, they can actually have bigger changes, right? Because they are close together. If their water gets polluted, then countries around them would also get a water pollution, right? So actually, that is why we believe that they actually have aligned interests. Yes, POI.
Don't you think what you're talking about is an external matter rather than an internal matter?
Well, we believe that this is internal, right? Because actually what they're like right now, what is happening in their like countries is that actually they have different policies on climate change. Some countries have like climate change policies, others do not. So like some countries care, some countries do not. So that is why like internally we should get them to have like political changes or get them to have like more policies that combat climate change, right? And you can only do that when you're like a big association, when you align your interests. So that is why we believe that actually when like the ASEAN like organization align their interests and like have like collective action towards things like climate change or towards a lot of crises that happen within their countries, like we believe that this actually means that they can be more closely aligned, they can have more global influence, and means that they over time, when they actually take action, they'll have more and more capacity to take action on the international scale, and more capacity to actually do things and actually make sure that people see them as an important organization, right? So that is why we strongly believe that they should actually abandon the ASEAN way and start to become active to make sure that people see them and to make sure that they can achieve a lot more in the long term. Thank you.
So first of all, proposition didn't give any definitions to the space, so let me define this. So internal problems. And we believe that internal problems mean political disputes that happen because someone in your own country is starting it against another country, or country versus country. Like that's internal. Nothing outside your country is affecting it. It's just your country versus your country. It's an internal dispute. Okay, and we need to define the ASEAN way. As the info side says, it's like disputes between countries politically, and it's themselves versus themselves. It's internal problems. And what are external problems? Problems that they solve together. It's something where something else is outside of the whole Asian countries is affecting one of the countries itself. Something outside this alliance is affecting it. Okay, so now moving on to my rebuttals. First of all, Prime Minister talks about how it ensures a lot more stability and security because there's a lot of political problems right now, right? So if they help each other without the ASEAN way, they can work together and solve issues. But first of all, they provide no mechanism that it's sure that all the different countries will come together and work to actually solve the political issues, right? And let me tell you why it's actually not that possible, and that's actually not the way it's going to happen. First of all, many different countries have different political points of views, right? So you can't say that they'll help and contribute. And also, like, what do we see countries as? Every country is for themselves. The only reason ASEAN is here right now is because it can ensure a harmonious relationship between countries and there won't be any wars between them, right? So every single every single rule, every single law they pass is best for themselves. Everything they do is for themselves because humans are selfish, right? For example, Russia trying to take over Ukraine. Why? Because they're selfish. They want the land that Ukraine has. Why is China wanting to take over Taiwan? Because they feel like Taiwan should be theirs. So every single person is selfish and wants the best for themselves and doesn't care about what others think. The government just wants to benefit the whole country, which is why ASEAN is existing right now, because it can ensure a harmonious relationship between every single country. So no wars will happen between them. So it benefits them because less wars. Okay, so now with that in mind, how do you know that they're going to settle this dispute, right? If they're just trying to do the best for themselves, how do you know? Like helping the West Philippines against China, it's not any like helpful to themselves. How it will benefit them? It won't. It's just going to benefit the West Philippines, right? So actually, in that case, they're probably not going to go. What? There's going to be war. There's going to be like really because of conflicts, they're going to like waste their resources, waste their time, waste their money, and they're not going to really get anything back. So why will they actually go there if they're just a selfish community? So actually, if without the Asian way, it's still not going to mean that they will work together to solve the issues. So, and also an even worse, in another worse scenario, in an even worse scenario, they're best for themselves, right? So when there's no Asian way, when West Philippines is against like China, right? Because then at this time, West Philippines is really, really weak because their main enemy is China. Then they can literally actually just start a war between them and just like take over the land West Philippines has, or like start conflict between them because there's no Asian way anymore, and that benefits the country the most. So actually, that's an even worse scenario. But normally in this scenario, they're not going to help because it's not benefiting them, and they're probably going to remove exports and imports because it's much more dangerous. Okay. Second of all, even if there's a lot of political, even if they work together, then it's still not going to work that well. They're just weak countries that's alliance together to form harmony, right? How do you expect them to like go over a really big country like China or something? The only reason that there's conflict is because the country that starts a conflict is really sure they're probably going to win. So how do you expect them? If they're pretty much sure they're going to win, then they probably are a lot stronger than you. So even if the countries go, it's not going to help out so much. Okay, second of all, proposition talks about how Asian is passive, right? So they can help say that they can target problems like climate problems, right? But actually that's already what's happening already right now. That's an external problem. It's not like internal conflict or internal problems inside. They're targeting it already because it's them versus nature. So they can still work as a political whole as Asian to target the climate change problem. So it's actually not an internal problem based on my definition. So it's external problem. So they're targeting it already. So it actually exists on both of our sides. Okay, now moving on to some points and characterization. So first, what is the purpose of Asian? It works as a diplomatic whole to accelerate their economic growth and ensure harmony between the countries. They want to promote the regional peace and stability. That is their goal and mission, to collab and have mutual assistance with each other and help each other, not interfere with other countries. And as side opposition, our burden is to prove that if Asian abandons the Asian way, it will actually fall apart and not cooperate as well. Okay, so now moving on to my arguments. First of all, actually removing the Asian way defies the purpose of Asian itself. Let me walk you through this. One, as I said, Asian was created to ensure harmony within the countries, and together they fight the countries outside. In order to keep this, they must stay harmonious on the inside, as I repeated previously, and between the countries to be able to collaborate together. If they have conflicts themselves, how are they going to like work with each other when they're conflicting with each other at the same time, right? But in Pop's world, a world without the Asian way, let's see. They're going to be indulged in many different arguments because of their politics, of their different POVs. Everybody has their own law. Everybody wants their own thing. So they're going to have disputes, right? If this wants this for the community, and if Indonesia wants this and Thailand wants this, then what will happen? They'll have an argument. They'll have conflict instead of how it's right now, harmonious, and no one affects each other. It's just for themselves. So when there are these disputes, then different countries will actually support different sides. It's going to break the harmony where no one's actually supporting anyone. It's just themselves versus others. It's going to be like a side that's obviously more powerful and a side that's not. And continuing, when these countries have different point of views in politics, they'll issue policies against each other, so the other person can like listen to you, right? And so that you can win over them. And so they won't be able to collaborate with each other anymore, not to mention collaborate effectively. Then when they can't even collaborate because they're having problems, how do you expect them to still stay harmonious and promote regional peace and stability and work as a diplomatic whole for economic growth? They're not even supporting each other anymore. They're not even collaborating effectively anymore, right? And then my second speaker will touch on the point about economical and political meltdown. And with that, I'm never prouder to oppose. Thank you.
So I'd like to start my speech with some refutation, and then I'll move on to rebuilding our side's 2 points. So first is refutation. What the leader of opposition tells us is that every country is selfish. So here we like to say in response is that we think this is the exact reason why we think we need to foster collective action to deal with these problems that are across the whole of like Southeast Asia. So we think that without this collective action and without taking action together, It means that, as we told you in our arguments, there's not going to be any collective action or working together. So second of all, they tell us that this motion is about internal problems and not about like relationships between different countries. So we think that internal disputes are often impacts of external ones. So what we mean by this is that we think international crises or like regional issues between different countries often cause problems within the countries that are affected. So for example, if you're going to have disputes between country A and country B, we think it's not only going to cause issues between the relationships, but it also cause problems within the countries because they're going to have different opinions. So which is why we think actually internal problems are very related to external ones later after my sentence. So then they also tell us harmony in the arguments. So we think that if there's this organization, the countries within it don't have common goals, we think they won't have any common ground whatsoever. So what does this mean? We think it means that as a whole, the countries in Southeast Asia won't be able to improve and they won't be able to like work together or have any common ground and collective action. Yeah, POI.
How are you guys sure that they will be working together when there isn't the ASEAN way?
So we think that what we're talking about here is mostly addressing those international problems or like problems within Asia, like for example, crises. And of course, I'll talk about this later in my speech. So even if they tell us that they won't work together, and like we think this is something that is going to be very unlikely that a bunch of countries are going to decide that it is okay to like have a lot of conflict, because we think if you're neighboring with a country, it is in the best interest of a country itself to not have bad like relationships with that country. We think it would not be beneficial for both of these countries. And so now moving on to rebuilding. Our first point is that we think this could lead to this organization having a more active role in like solving problems. So the first part is we think there's always going to be a lot of changing dynamics within these like, within the regional areas. And we think that the political landscape in Asia is going to be changing and that there's going to be a lot of different countries that are emerging as more powerful. And there's also going to be more security threats that are unique. So we think that to address these new changes, then the ASEAN organization, they need to change their own like way of solving problems. We think that having a more active role and being assertive based off the situation is something that needs to be considered to actually solve these problems. We think when, like for example, if this organization is stuck in the past, actions that may have worked before, we don't think it will work as effectively now. And we, as my partners mentioned about the example of the South China Sea, we see that a lack of cohesive approach among the member states actually led to a lot of tension, particularly between China and several other of the countries within the organization. And we think because there was like limited progress in negotiations, the problems weren't able to be solved. So politics in the world is ever changing. And we think that if these ways worked before doesn't mean that they will still work now. And we can already see examples of these appearing. So global organizations like this one, like the ASEAN, have to change. And if they don't change, we think they won't be able to solve problems well or effectively. So second part of this argument is stronger actions. So we think that there's always going to be complex, like external and internal relationships between different countries, which means they need to have stronger actions and more decisive, like actions or choices that are made to ensure more effectiveness. So we think that basically when they have more decisive actions and they solve more problems, it means this organization will become more credible and like more well known, which we'll also talk about later and my partner mentioned before. So why is this important? We think to actually solve problems, there has to be an active role within the problem solving. And especially in Southeast Asia, because there are a lot of countries, there's going to be a lot of tension and complex relationships. And if this organization isn't able to create an active role, we think that when they're met with a lot of these international crises or like issues within the region, it's going to be hard to solve this problem. So we think the reason why this is important is that there are a lot of issues that could potentially be solved, like the South China Sea tension or other issues like within countries. But we think there's a lot of problems that this like organization should be responsible for, and if they took an active role in this, they could help solve it. So our second point is just the stability and security. So first part of this is crisis management. We think that ASEAN needs to be able to react quickly and effectively, especially in crises, you need a central governing force to organize people. So for example, regarding like COVID-19, it was like a big country throughout the world, and it did start in Asia. So we think that while there were efforts to like coordinate health responses, like there was a lack of a unified strategy. And we think that because there are a lot of different national policies, for many of these crises, if there isn't a central like policy or central solution, it means it's going to be very chaotic and very messy throughout the countries, especially if you have like a lot of countries. So we think that if there was a central governing body that was able to create a solution or like within a region, it means that there could be a better way and like quicker solutions. So we think if they're able to have better crisis management by being directly able to solve internal issues about like these crises, it would prevent a lot of unneeded struggle. And so like the second part of this argument is attracting global cooperation, because we think it will be better for all Asian countries if they have more other global organizations where they share common values and are able to work together and facilitate more international cooperation. So what does this look like? We think that this would lead to more foreign investment and partnerships. What is happening right now is we think that ASEAN has often been criticized for like how it isn't addressing many of human rights issues in its member states like Cambodia or the Philippines. And we think that these are very important human rights issues, and if they're able to solve this, they could align their values with many other international organizations, which is why we support the motion. Thank you.
In this debate, opening proposition firmly asserts that these internal conflicts, such as they've only asserted one internal conflict, which is the conflict of human rights. And all the other examples, they asserted climate change, all these big problems in these Asian countries, they're all external problems. But they're all external problems because it's like, as my first speaker has given contextualization to, it is these countries versus the climate and how we are protecting nature, right? Not these countries against the other countries. So like this is an external problem. Secondly, they asserted that these internal problems such as human rights issues, etc., would not be able to resolve if we hold the Asian way. Two layers of rebuttal to this. First of all, when these Asian countries see one of their member states acting in a very inhumane manner that goes against the law, they can provide sanctions, they can kick them out of this collective as a whole. Secondly, this is not the Asian countries' responsibility, right? This is the United Nations responsibility. This is the United Nations responsibility on treating and fighting against human rights. This is not Asians' responsibility, right? They just need they can first of all distance themselves from this country, which is treating people inhumanely, and then and secondly, the United Nations can work to solve this issue. Okay, and they also asserted that as a whole, Asia won't be able to improve. Well, we believe that working together is better than working alone, right? Or working alone, such as problems such as climate change and outside threats and international threats, especially, which they stated, working together as a collective, multiple countries working together is better than tackling these problems alone. For example, Myanmar doesn't have a climate change system, but through the support of other and more advanced countries such as Malaysia and Vietnam, etc. I'll take that later after this rebuttal. They can tackle this climate problem much better by providing suggestions and ways to solve this issue. I'll take that POI.
Even if we abandon or keep the Asian way, basically, these countries cooperating because it is an economic group. So at the end of the day, cooperation is symmetrical on both sides.
Can you repeat that, please? There was no question. Okay, I'll just continue. So continue on with our rebuttals. They said that there's countries and there's tension. So there's countries in tension and people have the health. And you also asserted that these countries, when they're following the Asian way, they won't be able to face international stuff. First of all, based on the info slide, the member state disputes are not international disputes. They still work together with international stuff and external threats. Well, secondly, Exactly because of this tension, we don't want them to remove the Asian way. If you remove it and you start this conflict internally, you won't be able to cooperate with other member states and help help with external threats because they will have internal conflict. The Asian way is exactly why there isn't conflict in these countries right now. You said that there's tension and we're fixing and stopping that using the Asian way. Well, without it, tension would actually cause the conflict. Okay. Finally, you said that this
Wait,
the Asian way would make it chaotic and messy. Exactly. If you remove the Asian way, there's no way there's going to be chaos and mess. The reason the Asian way has worked currently and there's no major big political disputes between this country is because they're preventing the mess for all the nations and promoting peace around the world and especially in their region. I'll take that POI now. 3.
because these countries also know the negative effects of war. So even if there's no Asian way, why will they still have the incentive to start war with each other and have conflicts?
Well, why even risk it, right? Like, even if they know the threat of war, like there's still war even with these protections, right? Such as the Russian-Ukraine war, and like etc. etc. It's just gonna happen, right? But the Asian way ensures that it prevents war, and since side proposition has not provided any significant like any significant drawback to this, I don't believe that point should stand. They're selfish. The selfishness of these countries to gain more land, power, money, etc., will cause war, right? Like Asian way can ensure that these problems are addressed step by step in a peaceful manner to ensure everyone's safety within their own country. Now I'll move on to my point. Which is that abandoning the Asian way will lead to economic and political meltdown. These Asian countries are located in a very geographically, politically, and economically sensitive area. They work together in order to maintain some semblance of peace, or else they won't be able to face enemies together, as said in the previous point, right? As we stated in our characterization of countries, people are selfish, right? They want to get more money, more power, etc., etc., etc. So without the Asian way, these Asian countries will most likely start some dispute in some manner, right? The economy, some trades about land going wrong, etc., etc., etc. So they could start a dispute. The Asian way is important because it can prevent this dispute. Because if a dispute happens in this very geographically packed area of like nations, like it could lead to a big economic and political meltdown because bigger countries are getting involved, because they have aligned themselves with these smaller countries, leading into like a big war, a recession, like corrupt leaders, yeah, etc. If you start war, you won't like if you start war internally, you won't be able to defend against these bigger threats together because if you can't resolve your own conflicts internally, right? You're even arguing about who should send out your troops first, etc., etc., etc. You cannot protect political and economical meltdown from abroad. If you can't work together, how do you protect each other together, right? With that being said, this is why I believe that side opening opposition should clearly win this debate. I yield my time. Thank you. Pass to oppose.
After that front half exchange, I'm left like slightly confused as to what like this motion even is. Because I think the motion is about what ASEAN wants, which is why firstly I'm going to characterize what ASEAN wants. Secondly, I'm going to bring two new extensions, one on the efficiency for ASEAN. I'm going to vertically extend on the overreaching impacts for ASEAN itself because it's an active motion. And second extension will be on why you get so much more accessibility on our side. Thirdly, then if I have time, I will go into why we weigh over as well. If not, I'll just let Whip do that. Firstly, then on ASEAN, I want to firstly characterize it as an economic and politically based union. So all these nations, we do agree, seek to benefit from one another in terms of like trade, imports, and exports. They're generally consisted of like Southeast Asia. There's generally a lot of like non-democratic nations. They're generally not very supportive of the West because like China is more proximate and China is a potential and already very economic powerhouse. I think then that the best interest is just not to have conflict. I generally agree with like what OG says about these countries not wanting to have a lot of regional conflict because it's just not very good for either, for like all of the members within ASEAN. When you immediately then abandon the ASEAN way, you now give these nations a lot more control over other nations, and you just get far more cooperation. I'm going to explain why that happens in my first extension. First extension then, on why you get so much more efficiency for ASEAN, I'm going to vertically extend then on the overreaching impacts for ASEAN itself. Why? I think there's a principle that all nations should just endeavor to help one another because they are trying to benefit each other and get the benefits themselves within an economic union. So if a nation is failing and just not succeeding in general in terms of economics, you're very likely going to get lots of conflict within them. So you definitely want the best options and money for yourself. So if this nation that you are actively trading with and getting labor from is in turmoil, they're probably going to have like less goods and exports being produced. They're probably not going to want to buy from you. And they focus more about the civil conflict. Politicians care more about the public image and themselves winning. They're obviously not going to focus on trade with you as much. I think this looks like how Myanmar, which is part of ASEAN, had this massive civil war. You had massive amounts of human rights abuses. It's just extremely frequent. And that meant a lot of these people were just under pressure, being hurt, and just basically not producing any of the imports that you wanted. And that's meant that it was just much harder for them to trade with you, with a lot of the nations within ASEAN, and produce these valuable exports that you as ASEAN wanted from them. So often then, you can't just drop these nations because it looks bad for you on the world front, and these nations are binding and produce valuable goods that you generally just don't get anywhere else, such as like Vietnam and Bangladesh's massive manufacturing and rice power, Indonesia's palm oil, for example. So it just looks better for your own reputation when you're trading with countries that you actually have good nations, that are actually good nations. So you have large incentive to actually intervene a lot of the time as part of ASEAN, because on the global front, you don't want to seem like the nations you are associating yourself with are not very good, and you obviously want them to succeed so that you yourself as part of ASEAN will succeed, because this is like an economic like treaty, right? So I think the second layer of analysis I will go into here though is that when you actively then try to support them, it often means standing up for ASEAN's ideal side. If you're in a civil conflict like how like Myanmar was, right? It looks like how ASEAN will likely push for the side that benefits them the most in terms of politics. This results then in far more long-term cooperation and support for these nations in civil war deterioration, which I think is something that we're going to break the deadlock in, because I think this is what like opening half was basically like talking about the entire time. So I think that now people are far more likely going to be very grateful for ASEAN. They get more support for the side that actually appears more likely to win and give results. ASEAN will try to help the best side because that means that these nations will get more supported. ASEAN can place deals and conditions on them, and therefore creates a far more connected community and better economically for the nations within ASEAN. Why then should you weigh this above OG? You should weigh this very highly and above OG because I think this creates far more unity and therefore more economic support for all the nations in ASEAN. We tell you why you need to intervene a lot of the time in order to actually gain the economic support that you want. We also discuss then why this is uniquely in ASEAN's interest. Most nations in ASEAN do not want war because they want the money for Southeast Asia and get the trade around them. They want to benefit themselves. I think that's primarily what we agree with, like on both sides of the house. Second extension then on why you're far more likely going to get accessibility on our side of the house. Why is this going to happen? Firstly, I think it's often very difficult to provide very good and efficient trade within intergovernmental organizations because there's xenophobia or discrimination within people who are in these countries. It looks like the Uyghurs in China, who often have a lot of like beef with other nations. So when you have ASEAN helping actively support these other nations, which may be developing, and you have like economic powerhouses boosting one another, it's good to get rid of discrimination when you're like actively intervening in one another's like economy and like government. This is because many of the ASEAN members are developing, such as Malaysia and Indonesia, which means they often just don't get a lot of trade or money to support themselves. The impacts then of these nations with ASEAN not getting support and getting economic boosts is a few-fold. Firstly, Indonesia and Malaysia, for example, rely a lot on palm oil. They can possibly become a banana republic, or at least on a much higher scale to become so, because they become much more reliant on palm oil for governmental support. That means that the environment and people suffer because you have this fixation on just one particular part of their economy. This is then bad for ASEAN because they don't want to lose money and they want to have powerful members within. You can only do so sometimes when you intervene with these other nations in order to get the power that you want. I think you should weigh this then above OG because I think this is the most important thing for ASEAN. In order to be seen as powerful, they have to have far more cooperation than what happens in the status quo. We show then why this is uniquely in ASEAN's interests. Quickly then on OO, I think they tell us about how countries are very selfish and why countries are unlikely going to want to help each other. I think, yes, that is true. Countries are very selfish, but I disagree in saying so far that in order to be powerful and get as much money as possible, many of these imports like have to be gotten from other nations, right? A lot of times your climate or just geography is not suited to producing like rice, for example, unlike, for example, Vietnam. The reason then that ASEAN exists is because they want to keep the money and power within Southeast Asia or your own nation. Often it is only when you go into another nation's territory and directly help them, such as directly trying to stop the human rights abuses in Myanmar Myanmar or directly trying to get like more plantations in, for example, Indonesia, do you actually get the economic benefits that you as part of ASEAN want? Harmony often does not exist. When you have internal national conflicts, looks like Myanmar, when you had these massive conflicts, which were influencing its regional peace, no, you needed like an external influence to actually help them a lot of the times in order to have peace. I think that finally what DLO pulls out about how this is not their responsibility is probably true, but as ASEAN, I think this is an act of motion. We should be discussing what ASEAN wants, not whether it's their responsibility or whether like UN can just come in. I think you want to help your member states because it looks good when you're trying to help a poorer nation. I think that at the end of the day, it is within the incentive for ASEAN to try help as many nations within ASEAN as possible, because then that means they get better economic trade themselves. It means that they get more imports, exports, they get so much more trade. And I think that's at the end of the day, what you should weigh the most high in this debate, which is why I'm very proud to vote for CG.
They all stand that they fail to emphasize the goal of the ASEAN is to help the whole country, help the countries in this group. So that's the reason why that CO is going to emphasize the trust and the safety in this whole ground. Firstly, we're going to give reputation for the whole government bench. Like government bench always emphasize that they're getting better health, they can maintain development, and they can have better global influences. But we want to emphasize that firstly, there's still a coalition. We can still do that without banning it and helping problems effectively. And secondly, that if there's really and like everyone is work for our own interest, and government have to consider the motivation of the one who is providing help. So that's the reason why that they won't be so likely to being helped so much. We want to emphasize that belief and trust is more important than help. So going on to our extension, that is that the way provide the safety and trust to Asian countries. This is true because this is giving suggestions not causing problems. This show cooperation and decrease too much personal interest. Because this is kind of protection for the country who are not so strong as the others. And if they're having some big disasters, that they're more willing to receive help from others, not just being afraid of this help being the harm inside it, not just being the benefits and more consequences about it. It's like big country will say to small countries, "Oh, you receive my help, so you're gonna gave me some places." So for the small countries that they don't want to worry about this, they don't want to worry about war, they just want to focus in the disaster right now. So that's the reason why that the safety and the trust is so important in this round. So yeah, this will also bring big effects, just like the reasons to gain. Now we have already proved that the reasons to gain trust, and so that's the reason why that trust and safety, the way is the reason why that the small countries that join in it. If we want to have first development, if we have have a bright future for the Asian people, that we should ask more countries to join us, to join a future plan. So that's the reason why that safety is a really preparation, a really part of this debate. So that's the reason why that we should help each other. And Asian is the goal of this coalition is going to help others. It's going to doing as a cooperating without looking for some trading, without looking some betraying, without looking some harming from each other. We just wanted to have a bright future which we can cooperate with others without thinking of this harm. And so that's the reason why that some parts of some countries can go through a way, can have a bright future, can have a first development, because all they have to think is to how to go further, not just think about the harms, not think about that my friends are going to push me, is going to slap me, is going to hurt me in my behind. So that's the reason why that safety is so important in this round. And it's also a bit, and we believe that the trust is even better than help, because the help is, yes please.
My partner already tells you that only when you abolish the ASEAN way can you actually lead to economic powerhouses helping each other. This leads to more unity and economic benefits. Please respond.
So academic benefits is less important than you're having your countries being taken away, don't you, right? So that's the reason why that. So safety is a kind of way, is kind of protection for the whole country. So, and also if they have the safety, they are more willing to receive the help. They're more willing to improve their academic and economic politics. Some of these things they can they can receive more help than before. So that's the reason why it's more likely to have a bright future than without the safety. So they can accept help without thinking the sinister behind the cooperation and the coalition will become more united and solid. And because of we know that the part of Asian is like they have the same condition, they have the same status, and so that's the reason why that they should be a family, not being enemies, not thinking about their fake friends, and so they can have a more further and trustful communication. Now refuting the open government. The open government has talked about that security and crisis will increase the global influence. But however, we want to talk about is independent. Independent means that even though that they're in the whole corporation, they are still a country. They're still different countries. So that's the reason why that they have their own interest. So we cannot ensure that will he give a knife behind me? Will he hurt me? What is the motivation of this? They don't have to think about this. So we can do this without banning it. And because of security, because of safety, ensure our safety, ensure our motivation to gaining help and also POI.
Yeah, you can only have global influence and things like that when you are like working together very collectively.
Yes, so our goal is also to having a collective role, just because that if you're doing something, because everyone has their own interest, we have to worry about others. But however, having the safety means that we don't have to worry about so much of this. So that's really the reason why that we can have a more collective role after having the safety and security. So now I have responses to this POI. Now going on to the reputation of CG. CG talk about that how important it is to getting a better help and making a further development. However, our goal, yes, this is our goal. But however, even though that you gain help from it, that you cannot ensure that what is motivation. Is motivation going to hurt you? No. So that's the reason why that some countries are not so willing to help, not willing to gain this coalition, not willing to attend, going to join in this collective role. And the whole goal of the CO is going to create a harmony society and think about that, which think about a further development for future without think about others harming from others. So that's the reason why that yes, we're going to have a collective role, and we has also improved that why security is the most important part of this whole debate. So that's the reason why that judge you should vote for CO. That's all. Thank you.
Judge, closing opposition is already out of this debate because their impacts cannot outweigh ours. What is their case? A member of opposition brings you a few points into this debate, right? Member of opposition tells you how they won't help each other, how they believe that belief and trust is more important than collaboration with each other. This is their central idea over there. They think that the safety for those small countries are also really important. And their response to my POI says, like, basically, there's one country going to take over another country is more important than, for example, economic benefits. We do not see the logic in this because if you, for example, if one country in ASEAN start a war within the country, it is, for example, it is the obligation for the other member countries to actually prosecute this one country who started the war. This is within the treaties within the ASEAN. So basically, we don't see why one country will have the incentive to destroy a whole another country. We see that, for example, we see that our impacts are much more practical and much more realistic on both, for example, firstly, efficiency, secondly, accessibility, less discrimination, and basically economic powerhouses helping each other. Therefore, you see the member of opposition case just totally does not stand and cannot outweigh our case as closing government because of the fact that they tell you that belief and trust is more important than collaboration with each other. Even if we concede with this, however, this piece of argumentation cannot outweigh ours because we actually reach both, firstly, belief and trust at the same time and also collaboration at the same time. Judge, another clarification meanwhile. So we tell that this clarification is that basically the ASEAN way is basically these countries not interfering with, for example, their internal issues. However, collaboration, trade, imports and exports, and basically these economic trade-offs are actually still there. This means that basically collaboration is there. However, at the same time, belief and trust are also there, not as framed in member of opposition speech. So this piece of argumentation on their side totally does not stand. Moving on to impacts and tell you why we as closing government take down this debate at the end of the day. What do we bring it to you in my partner's member of government speech? My partner tells about 2 points. First, about efficiency. Second, about accessibility. We tell that we can actually vertically expand the overreaching impact of ASEAN itself. We tell that the practical impact of this, and that brings more unity and economic benefits. This is something and a practical impact that no other team can actually outweigh. Second, we talk about accessibility, how the economic power houses actually help each other. My partner give you the link, how this actually leads to less discrimination within these member countries. So at the end of the day, we with our practical impact outweigh all the three other houses on firstly, economic impact, secondly, peace, and thirdly, basically the ultimate goal of ASEAN itself, which is prosperity and basically peace within Southeast Asia. Move on to, for example, opening opposition, right? Opening opposition brings you a few points into debate. Opening opposition tells you how basically ASEAN is there to make a harmonious relationship. We believe that all houses conceive of this idea. However, they tell you that they must they will have disputes. They tell you like cooperation is better. How ASEAN way will prevent conflicts. We do not see why this, we believe that basically conflicts is actually symmetrical on both sides because we already proved to you like there's no incentive for these countries to actually start a war. It might feel why I asked them. I asked them why will they still have incentive. We don't understand their answer. We don't understand how they can actually explain or break down the dialogue. For example, how this is actually symmetrical on both sides. So I believe that my argumentation on this still stands. So at the end of the day, what we see now is that OO's arguments just totally cannot outweigh our side because they're framing that ASEAN way can actually prevent this dispute totally does not stand because of the fact that basically these countries totally doesn't have the incentive to start a war anyways. Even if we abandon ASEAN way, they will still be prosecuted if they start a war with the member countries. This is not something that this is not something they want for themselves because they're gonna get prosecuted by all the other 8 countries within the ASEAN itself. We don't see why there's incentive to start a war or have, for example, huge conflicts anyways in the current status quo. Therefore, the OO's argument cannot outweigh ours. No, thank you, because our practical impacts outweighs theirs. Moving on again to our opening houses and basically at the end of the day, summarizing before I end the speech, right? So basically, what does our opening house tell you in his in their OG's case? OG tells you brings you a few points in this debate. First about stability and security, second about global impact, and third about working together. We have, for example, we fill in a critical gap of our opening house. What is that critical gap exactly? We tell you about the practical impact. The central thing about ASEAN Way is that, for example, is that it is basically banning the interference within the internal issues. What we tell is that banning ASEAN Way leads to, firstly, efficiency. We are thinking about the vertical impact of ASEAN's future. This leads to actually the thing that OG and basically all the other houses want to achieve at the end of the day. The sole goal within this debate is basically having a harmonious and basically have a basically like a peaceful future for ASEAN overall. We think that we are the only team who can actually achieve this because moving back with OG's case, right? OG tells us stability and security. They tell that you can actually negotiate with other countries. Judge, I wish you would note again that negotiation is symmetrical. Even if you, for example, ban ASEAN Way or keep ASEAN Way, negotiation, collaboration, and trade is always there. They talk about like how they can lead to more global influence. We do not see why this will actually lead to more global influence because, for example, because basically you're just letting these countries not interfering with like other countries' internal issues. We don't see why this can lead to even more global impact as they frame to you. So this argument also falls. 3, they talk about working together, about climate policies and working together and share these resources. Judge, we totally concede. We believe that climate change is totally important. We believe that collective actions are also important. However, we should point out that this piece of argumentation is symmetrical on both sides. Collaboration, working together to fight climate change and global warming also exists on our side. So basically, Judge, now we believe that we should understand that basically all of the positive impacts that, for example, other houses frame to you also exist on our side because collaboration, trade, and also basically having a harmonic relationship with each other still exists on closing government. However, what makes us unique within this debate and what is your tipping point at the end of the day? Closing government, we brings you 2 arguments again. We tell about economic benefits, about a vertically expanded, for example, the impacts of that ASEAN in the long-term time frame. We believe that this piece of impact cannot be outweighed by other side. We see, for example, human rights abuses in Myanmar. We see, for example, within the huge civil war in Myanmar, no other country interfering. What this leads to is human rights abuses. We do not want these vulnerable stakeholders to be harmed. The only way we can solve this problem, prevent this from happening in the future, is to actually follow our side case, in which we basically in which we abolish the ASEAN Way, because this is the best interest of the ASEAN. So at the end of the day, Judge, what is our tipping point? First, we talk about efficiency. Our practical impact on this is this brings more unity and economic benefits. We that this outweighs other sides because they keep on telling about the positive effects. However, these positive effects also exist on our side because it's symmetrical. Second, we talk about accessibility, about how the economic powerhouses will actually help other countries, help each other. This economic benefits is actually encouraged on our side. There's less discrimination as framed in my partner's case. So at the end of the day, we actually bring you concrete, practical impacts that no other house can actually bring to you in this way. Therefore, CG. Thank you.
So we believe that what the extension my partner has given is just proves that taking away the Asian way does not give the Asian members global influence, and in fact it just takes away the fact, and it just proves that the government side cannot even achieve their goal of supporting the Asian members with taking away the Asian way. Now, I'm first going to do refutation upon the member of government whip, and then going to do my two themes. So firstly, upon refutation, the government whip has specified largely that they have said that our impacts, so the closing opposition's impacts, cannot outweigh theirs. But I believe that our impacts and extension proves that their goal cannot be achieved with what they are saying. The fact that taking away the Asian way, abandoning the Asian way in its entirety, one has the collaboration their arguments are based on. We have the same goal, to benefit Asian, ASEAN, but however, they cannot be able to achieve their goal with the motion that they're fighting for. Now, I will clarify upon my partner's points in my first theme about how does the Asian way benefit Asian, if at all. I will first tell you that the Asian way definitely benefits Asian. Now, why is that? We believe that the Asian way is necessary for Asian to maintain its stability, to maintain it being Asian in the first place. Firstly, we believe that dozens, even hundreds of years, ever since Asian has been founded, there is cooperation and trust all with the Asian way. You're taking away the biggest protocol and rule for Asian. The Asian way is the founding block of Asian itself, not accepted. The Asian way is something that builds Asian in its entirety. When you take away that, it's like taking away law from a society. It's like taking away rules from a class. It just causes chaos and general dispute around the entire Asian system and members. Now, we believe that Asian is founded upon the Asian way. That's why it's called the Asian way in the first place. Now, the reason that most, especially places like Myanmar, etc., agree to be included in Asian is because of this protocol, a protocol that glues them together, a protocol that allows them free reign over their own territory and not interference in any way. Now, the Asian way ensures peace, no interference with internal matters, but they are able to stand up and help each other in any external matters. With the Asian way gone, Asian falls apart. Now, why is that? It's because that all the Asian members are in the Asian, and the Asian is built upon the Asian way. When you take away the founding block of Asian, you just basically, as I've said, you take away the founding block. Everything else just topples because you take away the most general, the biggest protocol, and the biggest rule. Now, part of my second theme is which house benefits Asian more. We believe that in this debate, we are thinking about the benefits of Asian, how we benefit Asian, and why our contentions benefit Asian. We believe that the house who ultimately win is a house who benefits Asian in its entirety. Firstly, the government side as a whole has talked about climate change, about economics, about collective action and prices, but however, they do not actually achieve their goal of global importance, nor do they achieve their goal of cooperation within Asian, because when you take away the Asian way, you cause chaos because everyone has their own motives, as my partner has stated before. Now, the fact that the government tries to dissolve Asian is they're dissolving the Asian way, but in the meantime, they're just the Asian members will crash down upon themselves. And they actually don't realize the fact that we believe that taking away the Asian way from Asian cannot achieve their goal, and far from it, it actually makes their goal impossible to reach. the fact that Asian is Asian, the fact that Asian Way helps Asian, the fact that the Asian members are built upon the Asian Way means that when you take away the Asian Way, the Asian members or the Asian whole cooperation will fall apart. Now, our upper house, the opening opposition has stated that people have their own motivations and there will be general chaos if we take away the Asian Way. We agree with that wholeheartedly. However, we dig deeper and tell you that judge not only will there be chaos in Asian, but that Asian itself will fail. That there will no longer be the Asian that we know and use today. The countries in Asia will not be able to prosper without Asia. The fact that they will disband because you're taking away their most founding block of the Asian Way. Now, I will also like to tell you about general chaos and how the Asian will disband because of the Asian Way. As I've said before, a lot of places like Myanmar only chose to enter the Asian cooperation because of the Asian Way. The fact that even if there are internal matters that the other countries will not interfere, that means that they can have more trust in their partners. Because when they are able to interfere freely, everyone has their own motivations. But when we believe that when they are unable or do not have the right to act freely upon another's territory, means that there will form more trust upon the others because they have no way to infringe upon their own rights at the cost of something that they will definitely not want to be in part of, or the consequences upon that what they do. However, we believe that when you don't take away the Asian Way, when you don't change hundreds of years of tradition, that can make a stable economy, a stable collaboration between these member states. Now, in this, when we have these such economic member states in a stabilized position, it means that they'll have trust, cooperation, and overall, it impacts the entirety of the Asian members. It gives their citizens prosperity. It helps them in the best way possible, with little to no consequences. Now, as I've asked, which house benefits Asian more? As I've proven to you with me and my partners' contentions and my reputation and my themes, we believe that the closing opposition, benefit Asia more than any of the other houses, and that the government side does not, in its entirety, cannot achieve their goal, nor can do anything for Asia. Thank you.